Hello? Hi. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jules Ferenbacher. I will be moderating today. I want to welcome you all to UUFT, especially on this holiday, Mother's Day. That one's not mine, but it's okay. She can hang out. So we'll get started with the chalice lighting. Kathy Cowan. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we get started, I want to make an announcement to please shut off all of your phones, and if you come up to the microphone, please remember that this service is being recorded and will be put on YouTube. Kathy?
This is a poem called The Mushroom Hunters by Neil Gaiman. Science, as you know, my little one, is the study of the nature and behavior of the universe. It's based on observation, on experiment and measurement, and the formulation of laws to describe the facts revealed. In the old times, they say, the men came already fitted with brains designed to follow flesh beasts at a run, to hurtle blindly into the unknown, and then to find their way back home when lost, with a slain antelope to carry between them, or on bad hunting days, nothing. The women, who did not need to run down prey, had brains that spotted landmarks and made paths between them, left at the thorn bush and across the scree, and looked down in the bowl of the half-fallen tree, because sometimes there are mushrooms. Before the flint club or the flint busher's tools, the first tool of all was a sling for the baby, to keep our hands free, and something to put the berries in and the mushrooms in, the roots and the good leaves, the seeds and the crawlers. Then a flint pestle to smash, to crush, to grind, or to break. And sometimes men chased the beasts into the deep woods and never came back. Some mushrooms will kill you, while some will show you gods, and some will feed the hunger in our bellies. Identify. Others will kill us if we eat them raw, and kill us again if we cook them just once. But if we boil them in the spring water and pour the water away, and then boil them once more and pour the water away, only then can we eat them safely. Observe. Observe childbirth. Measure the swell of bellies and the shape of breasts, and through experience discover how to bring babies safely into the world. Observe everything. And the mushroom hunters walk the way they walk and watch the world and see what they observe, and some of them thrive and lick their lips, while others clutch their stomachs and expire. So laws are made and handed down on what is safe. Formulate. The tools we make to build our lives, our clothes, our food, our path home, all these things we base on observation, on experiment, on measurement, on truth. And science, you remember, is the study of the nature and behavior of the universe based on observation, experiment, and measurement, and the formulation of laws to describe these facts. The race continues. An early scientist drew beasts upon the walls of caves to show her children, now all fat on mushrooms and on berries, about what would be safe to hunt. The men go running on after beasts. The scientists walk more slowly over to the brow of the hill and down to the water's edge and past the place where the red clay runs. They are carrying their babies in the slings they made, freeing their hands to pick the mushrooms. I light the candle today, or actually, Tricia is lighting the candle today, for the cumulative knowledge passed down through the ages by our mothers that brought us here and has kept us safe.
We will now move on to announcements, joys, and concerns. I do not have any announcements, but if you would like to come up to the microphone.
I'm Dennis Bosley on behalf of NAMI Topeka. We're having NAMI walks 10 o'clock a.m. Saturday morning at Topeka West High School.
I'm Lana Balka, and I'm here with a message from Debbie Scanlon. She couldn't come today, but the other evening, she attended the JUMP gathering. I was there too, and I think I saw Raymond there as well. And she's interested in visiting with people about that project, and she asked that you call her. She would like to get together with some people who might be interested. JUMP is the Justice Unity Ministry project. At this time, it's comprised of 30 congregations working on such things as credit fraud, expansion of Medicare, and reduction of violence, and those are three of the really big projects. And so that's her message, and she invites you to contact her about that.
Hi, I'm Dylan. Speaking of Topeka West, I just graduated from there yesterday, so happy for myself on that part.
You never have to go back again.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Adam. I have a bit of a concern. A couple people know my husband, he had some head trauma that happened a while back, and it is not healing the way that the doctors want to. And so they're planning on doing an MRI on his neck to hopefully see if anything's going on. So, you know, just keep him in your thoughts and hope that everything comes back okay.
If we don't have anyone else, then we will move on to the story for all ages. Aaron?
Good morning, everybody. All right, children, come on up. Oh, careful there, Miss Hattie. And I want to remind the youth class first, before I start reading, that you'll be staying in here today for the service. But the children will come out with me. Our story for all ages today is My Mommy Hung the Moon, a love story by Jamie Lee Curtis and Laura Cornell. And it is all 100% true. My mommy hung the moon. She tied it with string. My mommy's good at everything. She lit up the sun so bright and so round. She puffed out each cloud, stretched trees from the ground. When she pours down rain so it's wet and dark, I climb up on her like she's Noah's Ark. She zaps out the thunder and makes lightning glow, then crayons for me a giant rainbow. She feathered the birds, she taught them to chirp, she taught me to speak and my cousin to burp. She grows all the food and makes it from scratch. And when she bakes me cookies, it's a big mama batch. She writes all the books. She made me TV. She drew every tune and boxed all DVDs. She webbed all the world. She dotted.com. She'd email the email, my own CD mom. My mommy's the boss. She drives in the pool. She cures all the sick. She works every tool. She zooms in the car. And boy, it goes fast. And those rocket ships, guess who made them blast? Not Musk. It is Mom. She flies all the planes. She rows all the ships. She makes my new kite do spins and backflips. She molds every ball, carves rackets and bats, and stealing the bases. She is way good at that. She buzzed every bee. She spun every spider. She growled every bear, and she striped every tiger. My mommy makes music, and boy, can she talk. While we hip and hop, my mommy moonwalks. Actually, I've never seen my mother moonwalk. I would like to. I'll ask her today. She rules the whole world from her throne. She's my queen. I am glad you're okay. Come on over. My mommy is nice. She never is mean. She pours all the seas and sparkles each star, and then she collects them in my nightlight jar. And when she paints night so jet black and deep, my mother's ship rocks me gently to sleep. I dream about how she gave me my start. I love my mommy with all of my heart. Then when I'm asleep, all safe in my nest, my mommy stays up and does all the rest. My mommy hung the moon. She tied it with string. My mommy is good at everything. The end. So let's sing the children out, and Willow will lead with the lantern. But let's pick up all the crayons. I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
All right, we will now go ahead and start the offering. You I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. We will go ahead and start today's presentation, Celebrating Mother's Day. Can acknowledging the past help us reframe the future? Cynthia and Niamh.
Hi, you've been looking at this picture for a while now. The Gibson girl is Blanche Loomis. Below her, the 50s matron is Margaret Van Duzer. That's my mom, Pat Maxwell, me, Cynthia Maxwell, or actually she was Pat Farr, and then Niamh Boaz. Okay, good morning. Good morning. Happy Mother's Day. Mothers were daughters first, unless they were sons, or Lilith, or Eve. Thus, much of what mothers do with and to their children is a result of what their mothers did to and with them. I was lucky in my matrilineal line. Blanche Loomis was a graduate of University of Kansas and went on to teach languages and serve as a librarian. I did not know my great-grandmother well, since she died when I was 7. Her legacy, but in addition to her commitment to education and literature, her legacy was her deep love for her daughter, Margaret Van Duzer, who graduated from Pittsburgh State University and taught languages in high schools across Kansas before she became a mother. Her principal expected her to not renew her contract when she got married, but she stuck it out in the 40s and actually taught until she became pregnant, at which time she had to, get out of the classroom because that was too scandalous. I knew my grandmother much better since I had almost 40 years with her. She was a recycler back in the 70s, concerned about environment and social justice issues, and an active force in the Victorian Museum, Quilt Guild, PEO, and her church in Wichita. Like her mother, Margaret was a staunch lover and supporter of her daughter, Tricia Tharp, who graduated from Wichita State University and taught English and French in Burkina Faso and Wichita. Margaret and I started something early on that changed the dynamic among women in our family. At least it seems like it from my perspective looking back. Around the time that my great-grandmother died and Margaret's eldest son also died, I got a fairly innocuous assignment from school to map a family tree. Now, I'm not blaming my teacher or trying to take credit, but the questions I asked triggered my grandmother's subsequent lifelong journey into genealogy that spanned continents and centuries. Not an easy task when you consider that my ancestors were farmers, artisans, teachers, a few Underground Railroad conductors, and Universalists, the redheaded stepchild of the Unitarians. But Margaret incredibly went back to the 1400s, before internet. She visited a lot of graveyards, churches, libraries, and county seats. Sorry, Grandma. Sorry, Mom, who is now compiling all of that. Not really, though, because taking one another seriously started for me at that point. So much so that when Tricia got thyroid cancer 6 years later, at 13 I moved into mother mode as she returned to the workforce to pay for medical bills. This was back in the early 80s when cancer treatment wasn't great, but you could actually pay for it with a working class salary. Ever since that time especially, my mother and I have taken turns providing and needing support, offering and heeding guidance. I think there's something about a line of teachers, like a line of mothers, that is special. All teachers begin as students, and good ones never stop learning. For me, these lines, daughter, mother, student, teacher, are forever blurred, and I like it that way. I spent 8 years as both teacher and student through multiple graduate programs, and that is my very special briar patch. The blurring of lines means that I listen. I may go off on a rant, or make snap judgments, but I listen. I hear, and I'm not afraid to circle back and say, hey, I may have disagreed with your decision, but I see where you're coming from. I may even say, I was wrong. Niamh is in the center photo. She's my daughter, though I see her mothering both me and my mother as we shamble into our senior years. She's a student, but aspires to be an art teacher at 13. Then next slide. Yay, thanks. I came to physical motherhood late in life. If not a literal Sarah, my geriatric pregnancy partnered with my use of the Bradley method to achieve a first natural childbirth at 42 was remarkable enough for my obstetrician to ask if interns could come in during the late stage of labor to witness the birth. I was 20 hours into labor with Mom and Sam on either side of me, and the most remarkable nurse ever supporting me, and frankly, any inhibitions I may have had were long gone. And I'm a teacher, so I said, sure, why not? Lights went on, and a group of people who looked young enough to be my kids gathered around my nether parts. I remember laughing, and then lost track of them and settled into the matter at hand. The light of my life was born that day. Both her first name, Lucinda, and family and fellowship name, Niamh, both mean light. And though every day is not perfect, and neither Niamh nor I are anywhere near perfect, she is the light that guides and inspires my best endeavors, the angel of my better nature. The first 6 years were easy, though Sam was in school for geology and I was finishing an MFA, then working as an adjunct, so we were in our 40s, living like a 20-something couple, just starting out with a young child. Happily, we lived near my mother, and she co-parented with us, providing constant love and support to the light of all our lives. Next slide. Before 2016, I was a regular voter, active in community issues, occasionally worked campaigns or the polls. Beginning in 2017, I became more active because I could see the effects that impending changes would have on my daughter and every other child in the United States. Because we're a unit, most of the time, Niamh was in attendance in the protests. Always my mother was, and sometimes even Sam. Honestly, I can't remember the number of rallies, town halls, and vigils we attended. Looking back, the ones that stand out were the Women's March, March for Our Lives, and the March for Science. Wichita organizers did an amazing job keeping us notified, and the League of Women Voters held public debates that drew crowds that overflowed. Beyond the amazement at the sheer number of protesters and activists, one memory remains. As frustrated and demoralized, or even angry at what was happening in our country, protesters were joyous. And I'll tell you, we were at the peace rally yesterday, and it is a joy every time. And one old man, I mean, he was really old, stopped in the intersection to ask Bill what the peace sign meant. And we just laughed. We're like, how do you go through life and not know? But when we told him it meant peace, he said, well, the world needs more of that. So it is always, there's always something weird that happens. We smiled and made like-minded friends, waved at supporters who honked, and laughed at the angry people who flipped us off or cursed us. Next slide. This will look more familiar. When we moved to Topeka in August of 2019, one of Sam's selling points on the house I never saw before moving in was the proximity to UUFT. My best friend in Wichita, Tara Albright, who attended UUFT as a teenager in the 70s and 80s for Al and RE, had told me how great it was. And she's also Niamh's godmother, so I trusted her. Niamh and I began attending UUFT in the fall of 2019. I loved the programming, and Niamh enjoyed RE even though numbers were low. Because Niamh and Sol were a year apart, and I was deeply invested in the social justice messages, Sarah and I became fast friends, and we enjoyed interaction with and support of Ivania's family. I went through new member classes and signed the book in January of 2020. With 2020 came COVID, and we went black. We absolutely isolated, minimized contact, masked at grocery stores. We did not see my mother for over a year, as so many people did. We protected others and probably became closer as a nuclear unit, though the isolation took its toll. In 2021, Jabel brought back RE, for which there are no words to express my gratitude. Jabel is and always will be a hero of mine and a beautiful UU example. Niamh joyously returned and has made friends that I believe will be lifelong. She discovered a love of helping and supporting younger kids, which has led her to consider teaching as a profession, and she embraced volunteering and doing everyday tasks in the fellowship. She's had the best mentors. Jean Ryan with the Haunted House and French Middle School, Catherine Schmidling, Free Trade, Kathy Cullen for the art books, David Schaeffer with the Blessing Box and Compost, and Linda and Bill Lucero for a multitude of rides to and from the fellowship or pools with or without Jaden. And of course, Aaron and Jabel Rogers for all things RE. When RE restarted, I was unaware of RE needs and worked in the Peace Garden, mostly unless RE was out in the field. This changed when Jabel reached out and mentioned assisting and invited me to my first LRE council meeting. I'm going to skip that. And this is the last slide for me. Next slide. Challenges will continue to rise, and I've learned to ask my daughter if she wants to engage. In the fall of 2019, we skipped school one Friday to join Greta Thunberg's effort to address climate change at the Capitol. Since there was only one other family in fourth grade, Niamh decided school was more important for her at that time. And I respect her decisions and now ask if she wants to go to protests, especially if the weather is dicey. I don't know that our engagement in protests has made much difference in the policies and practices of our state and federal government. Wichita did kind of change, and nationwide, incredible female role models entered politics and made my daughter aware of the possibilities. So I think that our protesting, activism, volunteering was and is well spent. We may not individually make this world a better place, but we're trying. And like Joseph Campbell, I've taught that the destination is not as important as what we learn on the journey. The joy of motherhood, for me at least, is watching my daughter learn along the way. She is a kinder, more empathic, thoughtful person than I ever imagined being or knowing. Certainly I'm biased, but I'm convinced that the children are our future. I'm happy to let them lead the way.
Hi, my name is Niamh, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. One thing we learned at rallies is that helium balloons are not the best signs in Kansas wind. But I also learned some more positive lessons about that in general. When Wichita threatened to close a lot of neighborhood pools, Grandma's friend Claire encouraged us to go to numerous town halls and information sessions. Since I use the public pools every summer, this issue was personal, so I paid attention. What I discovered was that city leaders actually paid attention to our concerns, and I was even interviewed at a town hall by a reporter. We did not save all the pools, but most of them are still open. Another thing I learned is that while rallies can be boring, sometimes a great speaker comes along and makes it all worthwhile. When I was asked to speak, and after I read my mom's part, which was sappy, to say the least, I looked at the 8 principles for guidance, and I realized how hard these simple principles can be in real life. I picked these 3 because I think everyone can work on these. The first principle asks us to avoid dehumanizing others, even bullies, and respect every person, even if we disagree with them, which is hard, for sure. The 7th principle asks us to protect the earth. More on that one later. The 8th principle asks us to stand up to oppression based on sex, race, gender, religion, or other identifications, which means standing up to bullies, fighting anti-trans legislation, opposing police brutality, and institutionalized oppression. Some people think that one individual can't make a difference. And while that is true, if we commit to better practices, we can make a difference as a community. Refuse. Refuse to buy cheap goods from companies or regions that aren't green. Buy in bulk when possible, and refuse to use pesticides, as that can hurt all organisms that can be beneficial to the ecosystem, even if they do hurt our houses or our plants. It can be helpful. Reduce. Reduce the use of meat products, electricity, water, and fossil fuels by limiting lighting and air conditioning. Use water barrels for gardening and don't run water unnecessarily. Carpool, walk, bike, or use public transportation when possible. Although, because we don't have public transportation across Gage, it can be difficult to get to some places. Reuse. Reuse packing materials like cardboard for gardening and plastic bags for trash collection. Reuse old cloths and cotton socks as rags or dog toys. That happened a lot, and they get stuck under things. The dogs enjoy it, as long as it doesn't hide itself under your bed. Shop secondhand or thrift stores. Repurpose containers for plants or organizing. I personally use my grandparents' pill bottles to sort and contain beads, which works if you can find them. Recycle. Compost and find recyclers for materials that can be recycled. Aluminum and metals are easily recycled, and if you take them in, you can even get money. Glass is harder, but the Congregationalists at 17th and Collins has a glass recycling bin, and Lowe's has 3 glass recycling bins. While each of us makes a tiny impact, making these life choices as a community makes a difference, just like living by the UU principles does.
I will now invite up Tricia and Cheyenne Waggoner.
In the Wiccan tradition, there are the 3 faces of women: the maiden, the mother, and the crone. Today, I would like to honor every single face that falls within those 3, and I would like to honor everyone across the gender spectrum who finds their way to motherhood. May that be through birth, through adoption, through stepchildren, or any of the other many magical ways that motherhood finds its way into our homes and our hearts. I have been a maiden, I have been a mother, and now I move into the honored role of crone. I brought 2 babies into this world and watched them as the seasons passed. With each season, they unfolded, ever changing and hinting at the adults they would become. With each year, I would discover changes, as if a new person had replaced the child I so loved. Similar, but not the same. And each time I fell in love with that new wonderful version of them. The baby, the toddler, the child, the teen. Along the way, I made mistakes. I blundered. I second-guessed. I worried. I stressed. But the years rolled on and they grew. Early on, Jack would run through the house pretending to fly like Buzz Lightyear, and Shy would put on the loudest shoes she could find and stomp down the hallway. Then there were bicycles and birthday parties, track meets and ballet recitals, first loves and first jobs. And then the strangest thing happened. One moved out, and then the other. Instead of watching from the front row, I was moved to the balcony seat. The time had come for me to let go and hope they'd call if they need me. I am still a mother. That part never truly stops. But it is no longer as big a part of my life. I am left with me. and what I want my life to be like now. No more driving kids to all the things. No more back-to-school shopping. No more dragging kids on vacations they're not sure they want to be on. But what is the life of a crone? I garden, I sew, but I did that before. A freedom has slowly started to settle over me, and I have yet to figure out what I want to do with it. I miss and I don't miss my children in that strange feeling of looking fondly back on something and having no desire to relive it. And looking forward is the strangest part. I am likely at or just past my halfway point. I can think more about myself. And for all of that time, I will be a crone. But there is power in the crone. I can spend all day in my studio if I want to. I can walk through the woods at my own pace. I can fix squash for dinner and no one will complain. And I also find that the older I get, the more confident I am. And the more comfortable I have become in my own skin. As I take a back seat to my children's lives, I take a front seat to my own. There is a lot to look forward to. I am the crone. Blessed be.
My talk is not going to be so organized. All I have is bullet points. Everyone else had a script. My name is Cheyenne. Use she, her pronouns in the third person. My transition from childhood to the role of maiden I see this time in my life as a stabilizing time. You know, the rampant hormones from when I was a teenager are no longer screwing with my head. Everything's a lot more clear. I've started college. I've found a relationship that I think is going to last a while. This is a very important time in my life, in any woman's life, when they're really figuring out who they're going to be going into being an adult. I think it's meant to be the most fruitful time in your life in terms of gaining friends and making experiences, finding a job that you will work for foreseeable future, which I haven't done yet. I think this is a time of decision making. Where will I live? Who will I love? Will I own dogs or cats or both? One thing I need to say is how grateful I am for my mother and all the mothers who have been in my life. There have been so many. Jean Ryan, big part of my life. Leah Pine, also another big role model in my life. There's one mother that I wish I could have met, but she's no longer with us, but I would have loved to call her my mother-in-law. I think about her a lot, just as I know that Dylan does. And I've seen how difficult it is for him and his sister to grow up and make these same transitions without her. Dylan said that he just graduated high school yesterday, and I know that he wishes his mother could have been there, and that's hard. It really is. Anyway, back to the topic I'm supposed to be talking about. So, one transition that I've made is from high school into college. It's a whole new sphere for me. I'm learning so much, and not just in the classroom. I'm learning so much about myself and how to conduct myself as a person. Because that's something you don't really figure out until you're an adult, right? How you're gonna live every day, what you like to do in the morning when you get up, and what you like to do throughout the day and before bed. It's not doing very well at this end. One thing though is I have a lot of anxiety now, especially. I'm so much more aware of the world around me than I used to be, and I have so much anxiety about what my life is going to look like. Will I be able to afford housing? Will I be able to pay off student debt when it's my time to accrue it? Will I get sick? Will someone I love get sick? And all of that puts a lot of fear in me, honestly. But I get through it on a day-to-day. I just try to think that I'm doing my best. I'm really at the opposite end of the maiden-mother crone cycle as my mother. She's going out of the mother phase, and I'm going into the maiden phase, trying to figure all of that out. But I really am so grateful for everything you've taught me.
Now we will be opening up for some congregational dialogue, so if you have anything you'd like to say, feel free to come up.
Hi, I'm Dr. What I witnessed this morning was floor breaking, displaying lots of emotional altered. Not to laugh.
Doing great, it's fine. I loved hearing your guys' story. It reminded me a lot of a conversation that I had with my own mother, where she said that the hardest part of having a kid grow up and go away is the fact that you just have to sit back and hope they make the right decisions. And I realized that the crone and the maiden are very similar in a lot of ways. That I miss the same thing that she does. That yes, I also miss when you make the decisions for me, and being able to have the level of guidance that parenthood brings the child. And it's hard to have the mother let go of that level of control, but it's also hard for the kid to have to let go with that level of security, also knowing that you have to grow up and go away and make your own decisions as an adult now. And so I just want all mothers to realize that even though we're stubborn and we don't say it, we miss you just as much as you miss us.
My name's Carol Jordan. I'm sort of new and sort of old to the fellowship. And does that work? But I'm remembering why I can't wear mascara, because I always cry. Thank you, moms and daughters, for what you said. I have another way to help celebrate Mother's Day. The ACLU of Kansas, League of Women Voters, Loud Light, other groups are starting a campaign to expand voting in Kansas. Shawnee County is a big part of it, to kind of counter some of the very subtle voter suppression efforts. So what I'm going to do is email, write, call, telegraph, whatever, our election commissioner, Andrew Howell, and say, Topeka is the only Class A city that only has one location for early voting in the state. Working moms need all the help they can get to go to vote. So tell them they need to expand our opportunities. Thanks.
Hi, Cheryl. I'm Cheryl, and I'm also going into the crone phase because my youngest is becoming their own person, and part of me is like, yay, I did my job, and it took me a year to go, well, okay, finally I cleaned up the room so I can make it my craft room. It took me a year because I realized I was grieving a lot of things at the same time. I was grieving a change in my vocation, where when you are an early childhood educator for 9 years, you're kind of a mama. When you're a teacher, you're a mama. You even have little ones that call you. I had one used to call me Mama Cher. Even though, and it was just, they didn't mind because I was a kind of mama to them. And so there's so many changes. And then even though I'm the crone, sometimes in the morning and I wake up, yeah, I hug that Stuffy, little monkey with flowers on it. Because deep inside, I'm still that little girl. So, yeah, it's quite a shift, isn't it?
My name is Lona Balka. I was very, very fortunate to have my mother around until she was 101 and a half years old. And I lived with her the last year and a half of her life. And I realized I didn't really know my mom until I lived with her. Moved in with her when she was 99, and so, you get a little more honest with each other. So this was our honesty. I said to you, Mom, I really never realized you're really kind of more rigid than I ever thought you were. And she says, well, I never realized you were as bossy as you were.
Hi, my name is Mindy. I had not heard of the maiden, mother, crone triad before. I kind of have more of a question than a comment. For those of us who did not or were not able to have children, where do you fall in that kind of, where is your place in that kind of, where is your place in that?
I also think it's kind of a small thing. Like, you can be motherly towards people, and
so you don't specifically have to be a mother to be like a mom to someone.
Well, I will hurry home and tell that to my chihuahua.
So I'm just going to add on to that. When my mother passed away when I was 7 years old, and I just want to say that after that happened, there were so many people who were my mom, so many mothers that were my mom when I needed them the most. And I want to say thank you. And you don't have to have children to be a mom.
And I think that's why this place is so important to so many of us, because we get more moms for our children that give us a break. And now we get to be grandmas to these kids. And what I thought I got up here to say was talking about your mother thinking you'd become bossy. I think that must be a step in the evolution or maturity of children, is when they get to be bossy to their moms. After I broke my arm, my sister gave my sons apparently permission to start bossing me around. And after I don't know how many of you know, but I was rear-ended on my way here last week. And my oldest son says, "Oh, Mom, have you been to the doctor yet?" "No, I wasn't sure I needed to." And then when I talked, he said, "Well, you need to go to have that checked out." And then, of course, my sister, who is a medical person, said, I didn't. But my other son had called before I had that conversation, and when he heard that, he goes, "So did you do it?" They got very bossy.
Hi, I'm Pat Maxwell. I don't know, lucky that I was medevaced from West Africa, and I had to take care of me, so I was staying with Mom and Dad because I had sold my house before I went. And so I took care of me for a while, and then I had to become caretaker for Dad and then for Mom. But having those years to spend with my mom, I got to know her so much better, and I got to realize how much she loved me. And it was a perfect time for me. And now I'm lucky that I live in the same town with Sin and Niamh, and life is joy.
And I would like to add, a little bit of my own experience. Mother's Day always kind of hits me a little bit like a double-edged sword. I cut my mother out of my life about 6 years ago. Sorry. She was a very toxic person. And I no longer have that relationship in my life. Sorry, I didn't think I was going to get that emotional. But this place, UUFT, has been very important to me because I have met several people who I kind of view as surrogate mothers who fill that role, who have been there for me when I need it. And I just want to thank all of you who have been there for me. Sorry. If we're done with congressional dialogue, if no one has anything else to add, I guess that's it.